I'm very satisfied that I think our government has taken a science-based approach, I think, to manage the pandemic, and that has worked to our advantage in a lot of ways.
And when it comes to the decisions around the vaccine rollout, the chopping and the changing, what do you make of the decision? I mean, for instance, we now know that AstraZeneca will now be, will now be stopped, and Johnson & Johnson will be taking over. What is your analysis of that entire process?
Yeah, I think when the first procurement came into our country, the government took a science-based approach, I think, to engage in the procurement process. And when they decided to stop, I think, the rollout, it was also based on science information that had emanated from our own scientists within South Africa. So I'm perfectly happy, I think, with the decision that our government and our minister has taken that are all based on science, and very good science for that matter. I think the fact that the AstraZeneca has been stopped in terms of the rollout, it's really based on a very simple scientific finding that the AstraZeneca vaccine does not obviously vaccine does not generate the sort of immune responses that allows for the prevention of the infection with the coronavirus, the variant B1351 that we have in South Africa. And for that reason alone, we shouldn't be, pussyfooting about this issue. We should just stop and use those vaccines that are available, that are effective or efficacious, like the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson, and possibly the Sputnik, because they all have a very high efficacy, I think, ratio.
The health minister says plans are in place to start the vaccine rollout next week. As a health ombudsman, how involved have you been in the procurement process?
I've not been involved in the procurement process. I'm not involved actually largely in the South African studies. I'm involved in the approval of 5 of these vaccine candidates globally as part of the Operation Warp Speed Data Safety Monitoring Board in the US. So I'm quite familiar with the intricacies of what goes on with the clinical trials and their approval, but I'm not involved in the South African thing, except that as a South African, obviously, I'm like every South African, passionate about what I think is good for our own country, and I would provide the best advice I can within the constraints of my role on the other side in giving advice to our government.
When it comes to the role of citizens, citizens having a voice and perhaps accessing you as the health ombudsman to get some sort of, some sort of coverage when it comes to the many concerns that come with the vaccine, what are those processes that need to be followed, and how open are you to welcoming those concerns?
Well, my role as the health ombudsman is a very simple one. I think people lodge complaints in relation to health matters, and I have to undertake investigations. Whether that involves a vaccine or it involves any other health-related matter, it's really immaterial. I have to receive a complaint from somewhere and undertake the investigation and make findings around that. And I suspect not so long, I will be beginning to hear about, I think, problems with vaccines, but I hope we have less of those, because I think the government is doing everything that it can do, I think, to systematize everything so that everybody, I think, has a shot at whatever comes into our country.
We heard Mkhize saying that he'll be willing to take the vaccine in public, and he'll be giving us a list of other ministers and politicians who will be doing the same. Do you have any concerns with that, or is it perhaps something that inspires some confidence among South Africans who may be feeling a little bit edgy about taking this vaccine?
I can only say that all the vaccines that have been approved now are all safe vaccines. I think what is different about the vaccines is their efficacy. As you know, I think there are about 5 or 6 of these. I think the most efficacious vaccines is the Pfizer one at 95%. It's followed by Moderna at 94.1%, followed by the Sputnik at 92%, and followed by Novavax at 89%, and followed by Johnson & Johnson at 67%, and AstraZeneca is the least at 62%. So it is the least efficacious of the approved vaccines at the moment.
And, you know, Johnson & Johnson, in the order that you put it out there, I think you listed it towards the end there. Is that something that should inspire some sort of confidence, because it doesn't seem to be right at the top there as a top priority? Or, you know, because it's in the 90s, should we just go ahead and really be confident that it will be effective?
No, I think the advantage of the Johnson & Johnson is a very simple one, that it has been tested in South Africa within the circulating virus, the so-called variant that exists in South Africa, and it has shown efficacy in that environment. So I think we are quite confident that it is an efficacious vaccine. Pfizer, it's the best efficacious against the traditional virus or the original virus. It hasn't been tested, I think, in the clinical setting within South Africa, but by all laboratory studies indicates that it will be efficacious, but we don't have, I think, the proof of the pudding yet. So as much as the efficacy of Johnson & Johnson is lower than that of Pfizer, the advantage about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is that it's a single dose. And as I say, it has been tested in our own context, in our own environment, and it has been shown to be efficacious. Remember that the bar for approval by the FDA is 50%, and I think the Johnson & Johnson is about 57% or so in South Africa, which is, it crosses the bar, and it should be acceptable as an efficacious vaccine.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time and input today, weighing in on the vaccine rollout. Health Ombudsman, Professor Malegapuru Makgoba.